Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us. I'm Mphosa Tole. As we commemorate Human Rights Day, a survey has been released in which a number of the LGBT+ community report that they have experienced verbal, physical or sexual discrimination in their everyday lives due to their sexual orientation and how they identify in society. Now, just to broaden this discussion, I'm joined via Skype by Jabulani Pereira, Executive Director of Iranti. Mr. Pereira, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, just to be expanding on that survey, the outcome of the survey, it further speaks about attitudes towards homosexuality and gender in South Africa. Now, the outcome shows that 51% believe that gay people should have the same human rights, but the really shocking part is a staggering 72% feel that the same-sex activity is morally wrong. Now, when it comes to these percentages that have been unveiled, what are your thoughts around it?
Hi, Mpho. Thanks so much. Also great that we're practicing some social distancing, so enjoying the interview. I think on this particular day in relation to the study, yes, I believe that a lot of social attitudes, be they influenced by culture or be they influenced by religious beliefs, really kind of influence the way society thinks about the LGBTI community or broader other kind of cues around gender, be it even around identities around women. But I do believe that homophobia and transphobia in particular is largely within society influenced by cultural codes and religious codes. And often people kind of perpetuate fear based on homophobia and transphobia because one day could not have enough information or kind of influenced by what churches inform them or other religious groups inform them. So I think the number is staggering. It is high. I do think the main issue around, it's fine to have a belief that is different, but I think when that belief becomes an action, as in I've now translated my belief into hate, and I've now translated my belief into violence, is largely where we see the impact of what beliefs have on the LGBTI persons. So we know that South Africa, this very beautiful constitution that we have to protect our rights, have certainly not been translated in relation to the kind of actions that we want. So there's a wide gap between what the Constitution says our human rights are, but looking at the high levels of murder, rape, and interpersonal violence on LGBTI persons is quite staggering. So there's kind of a big gap between what we say we want to be as a country and what we are in reality.
Now, as we speak, the visuals that are showing are the gay pride parades that are celebrated across the country every now and then. Now, looking at some of the issues that you've raised, I mean, you mentioned important elements by how people could be influenced by culture and their religious beliefs. Just looking at those elements and the platforms that are available to inform people and educate people about the LGBTQIA community, what do you think will be needed? What more needs to be done in terms of active citizenship?
Look, I think there's a lot of work around changing societal norms and behaviors and attitudes. I think it very much starts in our homes. It starts with how we enforce issues around femininity and masculinity. What is a boy? I think there are some very basic things that we teach children that if in the long term effectively causes harm. Because those kind of norms are not necessarily correct. And so that's the one problem. But I think when we transfer this to what should the government do, let's look at COVID-19 right now. What the government has done is, here's a disaster, we need to step up and we need to act. But when it comes to violence in this country, the government wants to set up a task team. They want to have a policy meeting. There is no critical understanding that violence in South Africa is a disaster and should be declared a disaster. So when we look at how alcohol, for example, plays a role in relation to murder, death, injuries, and disabilities in this country, we know that a large majority of LGBTI persons who are murdered by people who have high levels of intoxication, for example, for unregulated taverns, bars, pubs, etc. So there's a high linkage to what causes harm, violence within our society. When we look at violence on women's bodies, it's the same factors. So we have to ask ourselves, what is it that our own government is not getting about the extent and degree of the murder rate and violence in our society? Because it's, as I said, it's one thing you can have a belief and an opinion, and it's yours, and if it's offensive, keep it to yourself. However, when that belief is translated to violence and murder, it's a problem. And in the current state of South Africa, we have a massive problem around violence and murder, and there are a number of interlinked issues around that. So I think it's about how we intervene, how we break the understanding that violence shouldn't be normative, that there should be stronger measures in place. I do believe that there's a massive gap in relation to inequality and poverty. So the solution is not necessarily criminalizing people and putting them in jails if they are homophobic and transphobic. I think it's around economic redress. It's around poverty alleviation, and being able to create spaces where people can socialize in a way that there's common understandings and that diversity is respected. I think this is something we've all fought long and hard for, to be in this democracy. And I don't think there's anybody in our society that desires to be attacked or to be murdered. Right now, we're all fearing for this pandemic that we're all facing. And so how do we take care of each other? So we should use this very same ethic about taking care of ourselves in this pandemic, how we would look at how to eliminate violence within our society, and how do we collectively take care of each other in this way.
Now, in reaching the common understanding that you speak of here, we know that a very important factor will also be ensuring that, children are not able to mimic the behavior and the beliefs of adults when it comes to the LGBTQIA community. When it comes to our education system and the manner in which subjects like life orientation are communicated in class, which has a program that really is robust and progressive on paper, but there's still a bit of grey area when it comes to explaining homosexuality and the differences and the orientation of different people. What do you think are some of the ways to just go into that space and make a powerful impact when it comes to shaping the minds of young people in this country?
Well, I think we really have to start with teachers. I think the training of teachers, we have these curriculums. There's a lot of money that the government puts into sexual health and sexual education work. However, the gatekeepers of not affording learners the right to learn more around this are teachers. They would just openly say, well, I think I'll just skip that part of the curriculum and let's move on to plants and the locust, right? So there's really a way in which teachers themselves have to confront what their prejudices are so that we can kind of be more expansive to what we're teaching learners. I also think that a lot of our education, look right now with COVID again, HIV education, we work from the premise of instilling fear in children. So there's fear around sexual orientation, there's fear around gender expression and gender identity. And the curriculum part really has to shift towards positive identification, because what we're really doing to children is harming them. around so many fearful things, right? The COVID-19 fear, the HIV fear. So children are not really learning from a space of positivity and a space of self-agency. And we know that already by the ages of 3, children already have a very clear sense of their gender identity and their gender expression. Children already have a sense of their bodies. And as they grow up at the ages of 12, 16, they have already a sense of their sexual orientation and so forth. So I think it's about how do we instill that positiveness within it? How do we strengthen the capacity for teachers to be able to handle such curriculums? We know that so many teachers want to opt out of teaching this, again, based on a fear or based on religious beliefs,
Thank you so much.
etc.
Thank you for your time. Let's leave that conversation there. Thank you for taking the time to speak us through that. Jabulani Pereira, the Executive Director of Iranti. My time with you is up. I'll be back again with you on Monday morning, bright and early, 9 a.m. up until noon. But I do leave you in the capable hands of Lindy Sarami, who will be taking you through the big stories of the day throughout the afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. I'll be back again with you next week.